How you doing, Eric?
Good and you?
I'm doing pretty good.
That's good. That's good.
How's your day?
It was good. It's good. Wait,
That was pretty long, actually.
uh,
It's all right though.
mhm.
Yeah. What area of the country are you in anyway? I wanted to ask you.
I'm in Los Angeles.
Los Angeles.
hmm
Well, you're ready to get started, I'm sure.
Yeah, let me just try to
So,
get my mic set. Let's see. Hey, it should be
sure.
fine.
Yeah, there's no audio problems on my end.
Okay, that's good.
You can probably hear me well. You can hear me. Okay.
hmm
Okay. I'm gonna go ahead and get started then.
Okay.
Um, I always like to start with definition. So, the definition, so the resolution is the U.S. should not intervene in Syria, and the definition, according to the Oxford Dictionary of an intervention, is to take part in something so as to prevent or alter a result, or course of events. Therefore, the idea of this resolution is to state that the U.S. should not prevent or alter the course of events related to the Syrian insurgency that arose from the 2011 Arab Spring. The U.S. has no personal strategic or economic interest in the region that would benefit from toppling Assad. However, the Cold War, as well as alliances in the region who openly would benefit, have put the U.S. at odds with Syria for some time. And since the country became occupied by civil war almost 7 years ago, a moral case has been made repetitively that the Assad regime has committed atrocities. I will prove and enter evidence the need for regime change through force is not strong enough and casts reasonable doubt that acting would not be just. Further involvement is not worth the lives of American soldiers. The U.S. is tired of conflicts in the Middle East. After wasting $3 billion in Iraq on what turned out to be false allegations, Americans called legislators 99 to 1 to oppose an intervention in Syria in 2013. But there are four specific reasons the U.S. would not benefit from an invasion or regime change, in my opinion. So these are my four main points. There's no economic benefit. An invasion would show no return on costs like Iraq, Vietnam, etc. Two, the possibility of causing a larger conflict. Syria is closely allied with Russia and Iran, who and with Iran, who who make it clear that regime change is not an option. Both Russia and Iran are saying that regime change is that they're not going to allow this to happen, and they've done that over and over again. For example, Iran is building a new base there right now, and Russia uh, took chemical weapons out of Syria in 2013. And then, of course, we also have to consider the likelihood, this is my fourth point, that the areas will become controlled by extremist groups like ISIS while it continues to split apart. And it's and there, I mean, because I expect there to be a moral case as a rebuttal, that there's a good reason to topple Assad or for regime change. The thing is that all of the accusations against Assad, without going through everyone as a defense to start the debate, they all lack a motive. So all these alleged chemical attacks, they all lack a motive. Uh, and in each case, because the only group that would benefit are the people who are fighting Assad, because it would
Mhm.
because everyone's watching, so he has everything to lose and nothing to gain by using the chemical weapon. So there's really no motive without going through each case. That's what they all lack. And
Mhm.
I don't like using this argument. It's my last one before I'll let you get started, Eric. Is that the thing is, I think the analogy, I mean, without, I don't know if you want, when we talk about chemical weapons, if they use them or do they not. There's the United States Civil War, where General Sherman from Lancaster, Ohio, went and burned Atlanta, Georgia. Are you still there, Eric? Eric, can you hit refresh? I hope we haven't lost Eric. I'll just be patient.
Did it work? Do you see me?
Okay. Yeah. Can you see me okay?
Yeah.
Hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay. Well, I was throwing in just to close that the General Sherman from Lancaster, Ohio, burned Atlanta, Georgia, in the American Civil War. But and I don't like comparing atrocities, but it's just, and I don't like this idea either. But
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I guess if you're going to defend what General Sherman did, then it's the same
That's a
idea.
whole other debate.
Well, it's the same idea though that President Lincoln, he was at war and he did what he needed to do to stay in power. It's not really an argument that I like, but I mean,
Yeah.
it's on your side though to.
Okay, so I guess I'm starting.
It's your turn, yeah.
Okay, here we go. So I have 4 points that I'd like to make. The first step is that the thing is that the Syrian war is our fault in the first place. Because first thing is that it all starts with the toppling of Saddam Hussein. Because if we did not do that, this whole thing would not have happened. Because the reason why I say that is because it's a confirmed fact by Al Jazeera, by New York Times, Reuters, Associated Press, that that the people who control ISIS are the same people who was in control of Saddam's military since their invasion of Iran. So what's going on is entirely U.S.'s fault because they dismantled Iraq, and biggest mistake they made was that they banned former military members from participating in the country's party. And so as a result, as many ISIS defectors have pointed out, is that the people who are in charge of ISIS are in fact all former Iraqi officials. The second point, the second half of that point is that initially U.S. funded rebels, and those rebels turned out to form ISIS. And so this part of that is part of our duty. It's part of our responsibility to handle a mistake that we made. And so point number 2 is that the Russian and Syrian militaries have shown a constant disregard for human life. There was a very infamous video that circulated where the Russian military, they found a suspected pirate ship. They tied the pirates on the ship to their own boat. Then the Russian military put explosives onto that boat, went back to the ship and blew up the boat with the people inside them. That shows that, and not only that, but there are constant cases of Russian and Syrian military disregard of human lives. And that's the big problem. Is that the very big problem is that if we leave it alone, it's going to turn into a massive humanitarian disaster. And my final point, or second to last point, is that the war has spilled into Iraq, a nation who we consider an ally, because we're negligence. Because we announced that if Iraq gets attacked, we would defend them. And they have been attacked. And the only way to resolve the conflict is to help is to ensure that the threat from the neighbor is resolved. And finally, is obviously the genocide is a genocide and humanitarian conditions going on. Because as everyone knows, there are massive civilian casualties going on, majority being completely innocent in all of this, and they are being, and there's a virtual genocide going on of where not only Assad has done terrible things, but most notably ISIS has also found control of a form.
Hey there, Eric. Just, be patient.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you
Okay.
now.
Yeah. So
Mhm.
I'll let
Go
you
ahead.
go.
All right. I don't think your 4 points really answer mine. I think mine actually pretty much answer answer your points. So I'll go ahead and just go through them and then real quick, and then I'll further my case. So you start by saying that it happened in your first point. You start because of the conflict with Iraq. But but first, so you're saying that because we had a failed intervention, we should have another failed intervention, and then your third point is that there's a problem with Iraq. So that kind of conflicts. I mean, that there's obviously conflicting. I mean, we're supposed to cause more stability. I mean, so I don't think that's those either one of those really tie together. When you say Russia, and you give just one example, and the thing is, and then you say the war is really bad. But what happens if we do nothing? Because we're supporting the rebels, and the rebel factions that that leave the proper rebels or whatever. They're all radical. I mean, they're not. There's no moderate. I mean, there's more moderate is just not ISIS, but there are ones that divert to ISIS, and we know that they're bringing their weapons with them that the U.S. supplies to ISIS,
Yeah.
and we have allies in the region that are supplying ISIS. At least they've been accused of supplying it. There's some strong accusations. The
Well,
accusations
yeah.
from the
Well,
Syrian government
that's
to
a
be.
whole complicated issue because the issue because the thing is that our allies have been ISIS, but also thing is that Russia and Iran, and their allies, they have funded similar organizations. They're not ISIS, but they have helped fund similar terrorist organizations that are running amok throughout the region. Because during the point, I'll bring up the thing that's going on in Yemen right now. Because everyone knows that what's going on in Yemen is basically a proxy war between Iran and Saudi Arabia because both of the forces there are being funded by both Saudi Arabia and Iran. But also to further back up my point about what you were saying about the whole thing about uh, U.S. trying to throw away Assad because now we're no longer trying to overthrow Assad. That try has been completely aborted. Our thing now is just getting rid of. Our thing now is just getting rid of ISIS because once you get rid of ISIS, then we'll do whatever negotiations that have to be done with with Russia and Iran to make sure that all stuff that this stuff is that this stuff is becomes stable. Because the biggest thing is that we don't want another Iraq and we don't want another Libya because after we have seen that both of those countries, actually not Iraq, it's Somalia and Libya. Both of those countries are in terrible shapes. And so I'll let you go.
Wouldn't that argument be on my side though?
No, not really,
You're saying why isn't it on my side?
because because the reason why it's on my side is is for the fact that we actually understand and that we actually have a an achievable goal. The goal is no longer regime change. It's an achievable goal that can be done with cooperation from all sides. And so, and because we go further, is that since U.S. has been aiding Iraq, we have actually taken cities back already. Cities that have been under ISIS control for 3 years. Now, not after a year of U.S. helping Iraq, ISIS hasn't pushed out, and so now this is just the beginning, because now just to give a few more years, and
Okay, okay, all right, Eric, I hate to cut you off, but you're kind of jumping ahead, and I just want to ask you some questions.
Sure, go ahead.
When you talk about ISIS, I have 2 or 3 questions. So, so just answer, and I'll let you talk. Don't worry. What's going on in Syria right now with ISIS?
Yeah, because what's going on in Syria right now is basically going on is basically that they are currently attacking Raqqa right now. Because they're currently attacking Raqqa, ISIS still controls a massive portion of the country. Because the groups that control Syria right now is ISIS controls the most. Then there's the Syrian government. Then there's the rebels. But with
when
ISIS
was
in Syria,
your report that they're attacking Raqqa? When is that from?
Hmm?
Because my understanding is that Assad, I mean ISIS, yeah, they're still in Syria, but they're very weak right now.
because
Those stories that are coming out now are kind of like how much power. I mean, how much longer do we have? How much longer would Russia and Syria need to defeat them? I think the way the conversation is going now, I know that they still control an area, but it's actually the area that it's actually their western border.
Because to answer your question,
Raqqa's kind of in the middle. So.
Yeah, because to answer your question, it'll probably be only a few more years until the whole ISIS threat is taken care of for both Iraq and Syria.
Okay, but you don't have a report. You don't have an article that says
Actually,
that they're attacking Raqqa right now, right?
Let me get one. Just give me a few seconds. To get a nice report for you.
Well, you can look for that. But I have another question I want to ask.
Yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead. Well, I mean, I mean, I haven't. I could be wrong about that, but that's just my understanding. But I have another question for you because you mentioned you say groups. You say groups that are dangerous to our allies are over there. What groups are those, and who are they fighting?
Okay, so that's a question, and so I'm going to. So there's a couple groups. Because I say that there are groups that are dangerous to our allies, but groups that don't have certain agenda. They don't have agendas that would be beneficial to our allies. Because all they said was that there are multiple groups in Syria that are fighting each other. That's all. There are groups that are fighting each other. Those groups, the major groups, is of course the rebels, ISIS, and the Syrian government. The more because everyone pretty much acknowledged that the end result is going to be that the Syrian government is going to take over control of going to take over control of Syria once the whole ISIS threat is done. Because things that U.S. has realized to let the government.
But what I'm shooting at for is that you said our allies, Russia and Iran, have been funding but you didn't say who. You just said so. Yeah, I mean, you just point to groups that are fighting, but you don't say who.
Oh,
The
sorry
thing
about
is, I
that.
think you're talking about Hezbollah. I think you're talking about
Mhm.
Hezbollah, and I'm not trying to like glorify Hezbollah or something. But the
Yeah.
thing is, they're fighting ISIS. Hezbollah is fighting ISIS.
Well,
So yeah, I mean, maybe
that's
they're
a
not
really good
our
point though,
buddies, buddies, but they're fighting ISIS.
because that's a really good point though, because do you know who is fighting ISIS? Al Qaeda.
I
That's
mean,
a
the
really
other thing, I mean, I'll go ahead and go back through your points, and I'll tie this back to me, because I don't want to go off,
yeah. Okay,
go
that
away
makes
from
sense.
what the debate is about and lay it out here.
Mhm.
Is you talk about there's a proxy war going on between Iran
Mhm.
and Saudi Arabia and
Yeah.
Yemen. Saudi Arabia, they also want to attack Lebanon right now, right? So who would they have to go through to attack Lebanon? They have to go through Syria. So Saudi Arabia definitely has an interest in attacking Syria. Okay. So it's very much the same. But the thing is, the proxy war, of course, it's not only between Saudi Arabia, because if we're talking, you brought Hezbollah in by saying Iran is funded,
Mhm.
so it really has a lot to do with Israel, who's now saying that, because as you allude to, which is actually, I think it's not for sure, because what your other point is that Trump, which is unlike, this is actually unlike Hillary Clinton, just to throw that in there, says that he doesn't want regime change, and he's trying to, right. The other thing that's going on in the news right now,
Yeah.
the other big story is that he's talking, which this would be the intervention, I guess, is that we would go in there and work with Russia to
Yeah.
ISIS,
That's
and
my
that's
point.
what
Is
he's
that
talking about
that's
doing
fine.
now.
That working with.
But he has attacked Assad. This is, I mean, back just in April, he just attacked Assad. He just
Mhm.
attacked him and said that he would continue to do it. So I think it's actually kind of unclear. I mean, maybe he's saying that, and he's trying to work. The story is that he's trying to work with the Russians now, as opposed to Obama. But I think if he's already attacked Assad, that regime change or intervention is still on the table. And I didn't really, I didn't like the study, but I read a study by the Western University of Kentucky in preparation for this debate that says basically the U.S., for the same reasons that I'm citing in my debate, that we won't attack Syria now, but the odds are that it will happen down the road. Okay, but got to tie this back to the history.
Mhm.
There's been a pretty open policy that the other thing is that Syria, they've actually offered peace with Israel, and they actually helped us in the Iraqi war, and they were accused of, the Syrian government was accused of supporting these same groups that are trying to topple it in the Iraqi war, because they were who we were fighting in the Iraqi war, but they actually were willing to cooperate with us, and
Mhm.
they've been at war since 1967 with Israel over the Golan Heights, and this is one of the reasons why it's believed that an Israeli prime minister was executed, was that he wanted to make a peace deal with the Syrians, where he would give back the Golan Heights for peace. So it's believed that it's believed that's one of the reasons that he was assassinated. So Assad has said in the past that the only difference between that he wants peace with Israel, but the thing is that they won't give back the Golan Heights, and that's all that the thing is over. And there's a whole history that goes back here. I mean,
Mhm.
this thing got so heated in 1972 in the Cold War that it almost with Syria, that it almost started a nuclear war. It's as close as we've ever been to a nuclear war. So I mean, uh, let me dig through your points a little bit, and
Mhm.
Uh, so I mean, so I'm not seeing, and I'll go ahead and tie this back to my 4 points. Is that I'm not seeing an economic benefit. You haven't explained to me like
Okay.
how the U.S. how we would benefit. I haven't. I'm not. You're kind of telling me that. You're kind of telling me that it's to avoid a larger conflict, but I think that's clearly on my side, that how that could happen with Russia and Iran, and how and now, which obviously wouldn't be good. You haven't shown that there's a security threat to us, and you haven't. I mean, and you're saying this to stop the likelihood the area would be controlled by ISIS, but that just means that it would have to be an ongoing intervention,
Mhm. Okay.
and
So.
the area is going to be unstable as a result, because it's already split. It's split ethnically. Everyone knows that it's already split ethnically to begin with. So, and not to mention you have these factions in there, which are all radical. So we've seen it in Iraq, and that's your point. That's one of your points for not intervening is Iraq.
So I'm going to talk about your return of cost question, your security threat, and and your whole thing about the American public being tired of military conflicts. So I'm going to ask you those questions that you wanted me to talk about. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is the return of cost. What can America benefit from? So the first thing is that America will benefit from is the fact that one reality is that is because we are actually working with Russia to make sure that there aren't any actual accidental tragedies that happen between the U.S. and Russian armies and Air Force. That it means that there'll be actual higher amount of cooperation. Second thing is the fact that since the Syrian war has spilled over to Iraq, by dealing with the Syrian war, we will be able to enhance the economy of one of our growing allies, which is Iraq, because whose economy is growing, and by helping their economy grow, by helping them ensure their stability, that will enable U.S. to basically return their investment, probably within a decade or so of the growth, because what U.S. is doing with Iraq right now is no different than what U.S. did with Japan and with South Korea, because U.S. is helping them economically and security wise, and so resolving the conflict right there. And the other thing is that dealing and cooperating with the groups in Syria, that will help the security region wide. Because if we keep on doing what we do, what we're doing is that we are cooperating with the other sides. And yeah, because all the sides have suggested which targets they're going to attack, because the Russians and the Syrians decided to attack Raqqa, and Raqqa is pretty much close to being liberated. We just liberated Mosul right now, and so we will show that once we started to cooperate with each other, we were able to accomplish the same goals, and we will be able. We are showing that we will be able to do that in the other countries that ISIS has major grounds on. These countries being countries like Syria, Nigeria, and other countries. Because in other words, your return of cost will also tie in to your security threat. Because by showing that we can work together, we will be able to show that we work together. In this case, we'll be working together with multiple other countries where this group has infiltrated, and that means that when their influence is pretty much whittled down, their economies will grow. And when their economies grow, American businesses can expand and do business with them. That means that our economy. So that's my whole point. Is that U.S. helps expedite the Syrian war Not only will regional security drastically increase with with two more stable countries, Iraq and Syria will eventually become stable within a few years. And then, because that means that almost the entire region will be cleaned, will be cleaned, and their economy improving. And then we remember how U.S. helped them out. And then we're going to go into more of the angle because imagine being able to say, see, we work together, we got stuff done. Syria is improving economically, Iraq is improving economically, Libya improved economically, Nigeria is improving economically. So therefore, what we're doing is working. Let's keep on working together. And blah. So I'm gonna let you say your points.
It goes back to me asking you what happens if we do nothing. Why can't Assad do these things? And also goes back to your point that you didn't progress, that Iraq is unstable, as you say yourself, because of intervention. So what's going to make Syria stable because of intervention? Okay, and let's go ahead and look at our allies. Okay, Israel, they have policy papers that go back to the 80s and 90s, including a policy paper that's infamous because it was written by both Benjamin Netanyahu and Richard Pearl, who was part of the Bush administration and a dual citizen. They wrote a policy paper together with the Bush administration that in the 90s that illustrated that they wanted regime change in Syria because they wanted to destabilize the region as well as Iraq and Lebanon, and so forth and so on. So we have an open policy paper that says that there's an interest in destabilizing these regions, and that's a pattern that we're seeing. And it's, so I don't I don't think the U.S. really would have the interest in the stability that you're referring to. It would be better for our allies. In a way, our allies want it to be unstable because they want to conquer there. But I don't want to go too far into that. I'm just saying that that's not the interest that has been illustrated. And so even if an intervention were to bring economic stability, I don't see a reason why the Syrian government couldn't do that now if we did nothing, because they're fighting them and the Lebanese are fighting, and they have the support of course their other ally Iran, but but Russia and China. And the old Cold War thing going on. So I think they have plenty of ability to do that themselves. As far as free trade and stuff goes, I mean, we have sanctions on them. We could lift the sanctions if we could lift the sanctions, and that would help them. There's other things we can do than intervene. Let's go back over. I mean, you say, I mean, use Japan and South Korea as an example. I don't see how. I mean, they don't want us. I mean, Japan that doesn't want us there. They never wanted us there, and I don't think it. I mean, how do we help them? You didn't tell me how we help them.
Because actually, you made one error. You made one error because while your Japan situation was mildly correct, with that initially they did not want us there. We were an occupying force. That is true. We were occupying force. It was the end of World War II. They surrendered in one of the articles, and one of the instruments of surrender was occupation, while they were able to keep their emperor. But the difference is, but South Korea did want us there. That is the truth. South Korea did want us there. They wanted us there since the start of their conflict, because the South Koreans South Koreans asked for U.S. and UN help when the North Koreans invaded, and so
You think the
U.S.
Syrians
provided.
want us there? Do the Syrians want us there?
See, because because that's a that's a complicated question. That's a very complicated question because the thing is that prior to the first U.S. airstrike in Syria, public opinion was completely split in Syria, and that was due to, of course, the civil war going on, and so a large portion wanted you. So a large portion wanted U.S. help. Other portion did not, and that
Are you
because
talking about military aid, or are you talking about an actual invasion?
military
Because they
aid.
couldn't. Yeah. Okay. Well, it's impossible for these groups to be successful without military aid. We're propping them up. It's a proxy war, just like the Yemen war. It's a proxy war. I mean, they need the military aid, but I don't think that it actually means that they want us there and that they want
Yeah,
us in
yeah,
control.
because the thing is that what they're the thing is that U.S. is not because the thing is that U.S. the max of what they're because the absolute max because U.S. is providing air support roles. That's is their role, air support and supervisor roles, because you don't
And
see
we
a
already are there. If it is
yeah,
official, it's equal. Not
because
even.
our only ground forces we have in Syria are are ISIS rescue operations by Navy
No,
SEALs.
we actually control a region in the south. We control a zone in the south. It's we I can't remember what it's called, but it's supposedly it's for a reason. But yeah, it's a de-escalation zone. Yeah, we have a de-escalation zone in the
Yeah,
south.
yeah. That
Almost
that
like
was that was
that.
part of
So it's
a
more than what.
yeah that was part of an agreement between U.S., Russia, and Syria and the Syrian government was that the was that there be a de-escalation zone where the where various evacuees and refugees could go to. And so because so so back to your question about what because thing is that the Syrian rebels want us there because we're providing support. The Kurds want us there because we are providing air support. So we have two factions that are there that want our help. Two factions that
Okay,
are
Kurds, but do you think that rebels
serious
would want us to stay there after they won? The same people we were fighting in Iraq. You think that they would want us to actually be an occupier in the zone the same way we were in Japan, as you said?
because because let me tell you the truth. I was going to say the truth. Comparing Iraq economy wise, because Iraq economy wise, to pretty Saddam Hussein wise, because admittedly, I mean, admit it, is that between U.S. toppling of Saddam until about 2000, 2011, Iraq was economically unstable. Now they actually are growing pretty fast economically. And that is the truth. That is the truth that U.S. obeyed their promise that they would they would leave the country, and they did. And Japan made it, and we made a promise with Japan that they would leave, and we did. And we even did, and we only keep a base there if they want us. And Iraq said they didn't want us, so we left. You see, just like that. If the Syrians, if the Syrians after the conflict is over say they want us there, we will leave. That's typically how it's always been. After we have done we we will stay there for stability and security stuff, and then if they don't want us, we'll leave.
You're not telling me why they would want us though. I mean, you really expect me to assume that that these people would want to go through a regime change and a military occupation of their country. And so a few years down the line, they can make more money when the US could just relieve the sanctions now and stop funding the rebels and end the war. And the Syrian government and all these, and Russia and China and all these other allies, they could trade with them and they can do that now.
Because here's the thing. If the US leaves, they will still be fighting the rebels. They will still be fighting the Kurds. Because if US leaves, there won't be that much change. Because the reason why is because the US is not because US is not directly fighting the Syrian government. Because if they were, then you'd be completely correct. But we are not actively engaging in a war with the Syrian government.
It's not adding stability to the region, though. It's not adding stability to the region. It's still an intervention. It's not adding stability to the region. It's an intervention. Because we're down to about 4 minutes, so I think we're gonna have to close this one. And
okay,
and maybe we could do a second one here sometime.
Yeah,
because this is I'm sure you will agree with me that there's a lot of research that needs to go into this, and this is actually a really difficult debate to have. Mm-hmm. So we could do this more than once, and we could talk about it in so many different ways.
This is a very complicated. Yeah.
But just to get to this conversation, I know that you're following it like I am, and I think you enjoy history. You know a little bit more about history and enjoy it more than I do. But as far as this case for intervention, you're not really answering it. So I'm saying there's no economic benefit, for the same reason that you say would be a good reason to invade. You say you give the example of Iraq, but I pointed out that Syria actually helped us when we were fighting Iraq 10 years ago, and that we, even though they were accused of supporting the same people that are trying to topple their government now, and I've illustrated that the instability in Iraq would be like the instability in Syria, but and you haven't really answered that either. I've said that you've given this idea of adding stability, but I've said that we don't have to do anything except for lift the sanctions. What happens if we just lift the sanctions and do nothing? And their own government and allies can help them with that without us doing anything. You kind of talked around Japan and Korea, but the analogy is a little weak. And I only have about 2 minutes left, and I want to make sure you have a chance to talk, so I'm just going to speed through this as fast as I can. So the possibility, I said that my second point was the possibility of causing a larger conflict. You never told me how it wouldn't cause larger conflict with Russia and Iran. You have to. I'm not going to bring any new evidence into that, but I could go on about that. It really wasn't in the debate, but I said in the beginning, there's no security threat to the U.S. or its allies. You said that there was a security threat, but you didn't really tell me how either. I mean, the only security threat that I know is them coming over here and hurting us, but that's not going to happen anyway. I'm sorry if I threw an extra point there. And I said, and my fourth is I already talked about in my first conversation on my first point. But the fourth one is that it would become controlled by extremists like ISIS, and they would clash because of the ethnic split. And you haven't really answered that either. And I think a lot of your points kind of contradicted each other. But there's only about a minute and a half left, and I want to make sure you have a chance to finish. So go ahead.
Okay, so I'm going to answer. So you said how it can prove that it will not cause a greater conflict with Iran and Russia, because the thing is that we already have a very in-depth, complicated system, a complicated hotline system going on, where we are working with Russia and Iran to make sure that we are running our own campaigns. We are not going to be conflicting with each other, because that's the entire point of the hotline system. Is that if U.S. confirms an airstrike, we contact Russia and Syria, let them know that we are doing an airstrike. Here is the zone. make sure that there's no one in that. There's none of your guys in that zone. That's what we're doing. That's what we're doing with that. Is that we're working to make sure there's a conflict. Oh my gosh, only 10 seconds left. Okay, so finally, I just say that 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 with war, there's always extremism. Oh well, I'm done with. I'm not ran out of time.